Okay, and we are live. Welcome to Behind the Shot. Happy Friday. Sorry, no, happy Monday. It feels like Friday because it's been a long weekend. So hey guys, welcome back to Behind the Shot, where top visual sorry. Okay, again. Welcome to Behind the Shot, and it is a Monday. Sorry about that. Behind the Shot is where top visual storytellers share their best three shots and the stories behind them. Behind the Shot is brought to you by Deity microphones. So I use these mics in the field, and they've been kind enough to support this small, struggling show. So what I'm using right now is the Deity D3 Pro. So I've been using this for behind the shot. I also have the S Mic 2S for my other vlogs, and I also use the VLab when I'm out on assignments. So today we are on episode 7. And if you guys have been with us for the past 3 or 4 episodes, it has been quite a struggle because of all the technical difficulties with dealing with Zoom. But we are powering through. That said, these difficulties have been a constant companion to us, and it has been adding a sort of flavor to the show. So, for the guys who have been struggling with us, thank you for the support. And if there are any problems, we will try to fix it down the line. Hopefully, it's not as distracting it has been for the past few episodes. And as a sort of commitment and celebration of me powering through, I actually changed the logo of behind the shot, updating it, and I changed that zero or that O into a page curl with that iris. So I'm actually thinking of turning this into a cap or a patch or a t-shirt. Let me know in the comments if it's something that you're interested in. We have a comment here, and it's from Mabel de Mavivas, and she's saying, "Go go video classmate VJ." That's kind of telegraphing our guest today, but it's really no secret. So hi Mabel, and for everyone who's there, let me know in the comments of YouTube where you're from, so that we know, uh, where you're from. I know this guest of ours today has a worldwide fan base, so it would be good to know where everyone is watching from. And for our new viewers, those who are just new to Behind the Shot, who joined us simply because they want to see the guest and see his work. My name is Noel Guevara. I am the host of Behind the Shot. I'm a conservation and wildlife photographer and filmmaker. If you want some context into my work, you can visit my Instagram that is posted right there, Noel Guevara Photo. Behind the Shot is one of the shows that I have here on YouTube. And basically, what I'm trying to do is have shows like this one, like a live online talk show, the top genre shows, for example, a gear review show, a travel video. I'm using all of these as a platform where I could share pressing environmental issues and nuggets of conservation information or wisdom. And if this is something that's down the line, something that you would like, that's something that you're interested in, please do like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. That will help me greatly. And right now we are streaming as well on YouTube as the primary platform, but we have a stream as well here on Facebook Live. And this is to give you guys a taste of what Behind the Shot is about. And it is a teaser stream, so I'll be cutting it before the third photo. That's how it usually goes. Each guest will share their three best work, so photo or video, and before the last or the third photo, I will cut the Facebook stream and invite everyone to move on to YouTube. So you can, don't worry, I will notify you. And but if you want to transition now or move to YouTube, please do. All right. Now this week we have a lot of guests. We have guests here who are at the top of their game, and these are celebrated photographers. We have today Vijay, and then we have Jilson on Wednesday, and we have Gab Mejia also on Friday. Right. Okay. So let me introduce our host. This is going to be fun. Okay. We've been very serious. We've been a bit serious for the past few episodes, but I think it's going to break this time around. So this guy, our guest, started out as a staff photographer for a national news magazine covering the hard news and political beat. He later on pursued documentary photography to work with environmental, health, and social justice issues in Asia. This guy really has that veteran, rugged look about himself. And his work has been exhibited in the US, Europe, and other Asian countries and published in several international news outlets. His work has been the recipient of several grants and awards, such as the Ian Paris Scholarship Grant 2008, the Jupe Swart Masterclass in 2013, Pulitzer Center for Crisis Reporting in 2015, Invisible Photographer Asia Photo Book Award in 2018, amongst others. But, that is what this guy is about. But on a personal note, this guy has helped me with all my visual storytelling and photo essays, all the projects that I've been encountering, the when I was applying for grants as well. So this guy has been there giving me sound advice, and it was through his guidance that I will have to say that my work in terms of conservation has matured, because I started as a nature and wildlife photographer, and I also have his book Signos right here, and he wrote a dedication. I won't read that to you, but if you would look at that, that is how he signed it. At first, I thought it read as sweet, but no, it was actually his name. But to each his own. Okay, so right, so there you go. And this guy is a man's man and an all-around nice guy. So it's my pleasure to introduce the celebrated Veejay Villafranca. And here you go, VJ. You are now live.
Celebrated.
Of course. How are
Nakakatakot ng
how are you,
introduction.
man? How are you doing?
I'm okay. Thank you, Noel, actually, for inviting me. Finally, it happened.
Yeah, I know.
After some planning.
It was actually through VJ's help as well and his suggestions. That's why I was able to put up behind the shot. VJ, so since you're usually working the beat, how has it been for you now during lockdown? What have you been working on?
Um, I haven't been as active as my colleagues, especially the ones who go into the red zones, like in the hospitals or covering the coronavirus pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Na tutok.
Okay.
Me, I've been since I work for a business news agency.
Mm-hmm.
We cover a little bit on economy, a little bit of daily life, and in some bits on what is actually happening on the ground. So I've been doing that since the lockdown in March. But other than that, I've just been staying home. I'm doing a lot of this Zoom conferences.
It is the name of the game. So
uh,
let me ask you this, VJ. Let's pierce the veil a bit before we move on to the photos. No, you're technically, as a photographer and the journalist, photojournalists are considered frontliners as well, because you guys bring the news to us. And how has it been for you? I know you have a family. How has it been with you when you're balancing work and of course the safety of your family? How does that go?
yeah, to be honest, that's why I'm also a little bit apprehensive to go full on because I don't, the house that I stay in is an apartment. I don't have a secluded area where I can quarantine myself if
Mm-hmm.
ever I have to go to the red zone or the hospitals. So what I do is I do due diligence of disinfecting and keeping my social distance whenever I'm out. But those moments where I had to be sort of exposed to like a group of people or like a mass of people, yun, I do the disinfecting. And then when I go home, everyone goes to the room
Mm-hmm.
while I disinfect. Other than that, it's also different, no? Because managing the house when you're on a lockdown is, hindi naman yes, challenging also. It has its challenges.
Okay.
Uh, yeah.
And that is interesting. Now, my question is, you have covered conflict, you've covered disasters, you've covered quite a lot of news headlines. Is this somewhat different from you covering COVID-19 and the lockdown as it kind of hits closer to home? Does that add a sort of bias to the storytelling? Does it affect it in some ways?
Yes, I think that's a very good point to raise. It's different in a sense that, yun nga, everyone's affected by it, but also at the same time, covering it is quite difficult because you expose yourself to possible either you contract the virus or
Mm-hmm.
you become a carrier of the virus and you don't know that you keep hopping around different areas while you're doing your work, that you can actually spread it around. So that's what's more different about it. At the same time, I raised this question in another forum that being a being a documentary photographer or just a photographer, yung intimacy on how before we can enter houses right
Right.
away or we can enter communities right away, but today or during this pandemic, it's quite different. So that's one hard part about it. Not that other news coverages I've had was easy,
Mhm.
um, but at the same time the level of access changed pala.
Okay, good that you mentioned access and then touching base with the community. We have very interesting stories right now, very human stories that we have lined up for our guests. And out of all of these three, not to telegraph it, but you have worked with gangs, you have worked with those who practice religious rituals, and you have visited those who were displaced. Which one is actually the hardest for you to get embedded, for you to sort of relate to these people and for them to open up to you with the stories that you're covering?
um I can't say which one. Just parang just an introduction. Documentary photography kasi it's an immersion.
Hmm.
It's an immersion into a story, into a topic, or like a lot of Filipino photographers comes from an advocacy,
Right.
especially the lineage here in the Philippines is much more parang connected to social justice and
Yes.
social issues as well. So when it comes when I discovered documentary photography, I felt that that's one aspect of it that cannot be changed. You
Okay.
immerse yourself and you let your subjects show the different facets of their lives to you
Correct.
while you document that.
Right. Okay. All right. So for those of you who are joining us, we have right now Veejay Villafranca as our guest. If you want to see more of his work, please visit his Instagram, Veejay Villafranca. You can also, for context, visit my Noel Guevara photo. And now we'll move to the first set of photos. So for this one, Vijay, would you please set it up for us?
Sure. So yun, when I was doing news photography back when I started in 2000, late 2002, I went on for about 3.5, almost 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
During that time, I came across this story or this parang issue in Baseco. I met a group of kids who was dancing around and playing around and being very, they engaged me in conversations like, oh, we're a member of a gang and so on. Um, so fast forward to about 2006 when I decided that I wanted to pursue long-term projects or long-term stories. I thought about this kid, so I went back to Baseco and actually looked for them, and I did find them. And at this point, I was looking for a project that would sort of visualize how Filipino youth, the different facets of Filipino youth
Mm-hmm.
or youth culture. So then, yeah, I decided to pursue the kids, and later on, the kids weren't actually gang members. It was more of the elders in their community, the older guys in the community, which I got to know after about mga 2 3 months of trying to pursue trying to find who the real gang members are, the former gang members at that. So, like for example, this first photo, which is one of the parang representative images of that series. These were the three guys actually who took me in, and they were the senior members of that gang. Their gang was called Chinese Mafia Crew, or
Okay.
so they say. Yeah.
Okay. Now, with these gangs, just to clarify, we have some guests who are also starting out photographers who want to probably follow your path. This is not an assignment, right? This is a personal project.
It was a personal project, but then it was a dual purpose because at that time I was pursuing my course in diploma in visual in photojournalism pa nun, diploma
Mm-hmm.
in photojournalism at the Asian Center for Journalism in Ateneo in Conrad Adenauer Institute.
Okay.
So I use this project as my final um, work, parang final portfolio.
Okay. And then the gang members, they were very welcoming naman for you to come in and tell their story.
Oh no, it took a while. It took siguro mga all in all mga almost 6 months then of going there and spending time with them, talking to them. But even at the onset, I was open to them about my intentions of I said that I wanted to spend time with them and
Mm-hmm.
do a documentary about their lives as former gang members.
Okay, all right. And then the series of shots that you have now are from 1 year of shooting or being embedded in that community.
Yung main the parang the thrust of that project took over a year before I sat down and said I need to select a solid edit na to show and also to pitch to editors. So this series of photos that you're showing now is or sort of representative, or I tried to visualize the different facets of former gang members
Mm-hmm.
because yun nga parang as I've shown this work several times over, people tend to gravitate towards the pagka-astig or like how
Yes.
badass it sounds, no? Because
Right.
gang members, so a lot of things come into mind: Godfather, Latin
Yeah.
American gangs, African American gangs. On the contrary, I wanted to show something different. Gangs of Baseco. Ito later on, I just figured this out later on when I started showing this work. When I was initially showing this work around to editors or galleries and to other platforms,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really exactly know what I wanted to show. But later on, people questioned my intention. So,
Right.
um, parang at the bottom of it, I wanted to show how different Filipino groups cope with everyday life.
Okay.
So, for example, this former gang members, I wanted to show what facets of their lives, how do they survive the vicious cycle of life in, say, Baseco. Baseco, which is sort of a microcosm of the Philippines,
Okay.
or at least in greater parts of the Philippines. There are a lot of migrants there. There's environmental stories there, social issues, a lot of things. Idiosyncratic yan, Baseco for us.
Okay. This is an interesting photo. What is happening here?
So yun, one facet nga of the gangs of the Chinese mafia crew boys is that they have a strong faith system. So this is
Okay.
during Good Friday. So what they do every Good Friday, uh, they walk from Baseco Tondo to Tondo Church, to the Santo Niño Church in Tondo, and they do a panata or
Okay.
devotion, the show of devotion. So they walk barefoot with all the religious materials or yan mga rosary that they have, and they make a human chain, sort of similar to the Black Nazarene.
Okay.
But at
I was
this
gonna say.
time, yung procession ng ano yan, I think yung nakahigang Jesus kasi Good Friday yan.
Okay.
So yun.
Okay. Right. And then, uh, that's interesting. You said about your intentions and the story. There was one time I remember, VJ, that we sat down and I asked you, and I'm sure people are curious about this. Is that when you approach a story, do you already have an end in mind, or is it something that when you approach your projects, is it an open ended book and you try to figure it out until the end?
Ideally, if you're gonna be sort of like a purist about it, documentary talaga is, yeah, as I said, immersive. So
Yeah.
you have to wait how the story will unfold. But given that, for example, when you have a journalistic background, you sort of parang envision what your story is about, right?
Right.
Not exactly the end of it, but like the message that you want to send across. So ideally it's, but also as a sign of respect then to the subjects, you wait until something unfolds to you. I think that's the process of documentary uh, that should be retained or should be
Correct.
practiced
Right.
as well.
Okay.
Kasi nangyayari minsan dahil like, parang ang nangyari, nag-shift yung practice ng documentary into a style. Naging style siya of photography, but
Mm-hmm.
actually it's not a style. It's another discipline of photography. So nung naging style siya, parang people have this end. Meron na silang series of how to start, middle, create conflict, and how to end it. in terms of
So it's
photographs.
like storyboarded already from the
Parang
beginning in their
gano'n,
heads.
parang naging
Okay.
storyboard.
Right. Okay. And then when there was one time I read an article how quickly the turnaround now because of how things go, how quickly some photographers go in, parachute in. That was the term that they used, and then they just go in and then tell the story, what's in their head, and then they parachute out, and that was it. So it kind of like what you're saying. It sort of sidesteps the whole embedding process.
Oh, basically kasi, well, yun, documentary photography then is also intrusion.
Yeah.
You intrude the personal space. You are given parang unrequited permission
Mm-hmm.
to be in their, be in their personal space. In return, their story, you have to listen to their story and actually transcend that.
Right. Okay. Okay. And then this is an interesting photo as well, VJ.
Oh, this one, yeah, I remember this photo when this photo was taken. It was taken during one afternoon. Actually, a lot of times that I was there, most of the moments that I spent with them, it's very nothing happens. It's just an afternoon. They were smoking, sometimes drinking,
Mm.
sometimes just hanging out, sharing stories. This afternoon, I remember they called me into one of the areas and said, "Oh, because one of their members or friends got into a fight with a rival gang a
Okay.
few days before that, and he
Okay.
was in the hospital." So I was like, "Okay, so what do you do?" So I asked them, "How do you protect yourself? How do you, are there still gang wars?" Kasi syempre yung idea natin ng gang wars, ganun din,
Yeah.
very Western
Yes. Yes.
or very foreign. They have all this like top top down cars and all that.
Drive-by
So yun,
shootings and so on. Yeah.
drive by shooting. So hinatak nila ako in one of the shacks, and they showed me this. This is their parang homemade weapon. So the one on the left is a sumpak. It's a homemade gun
Okay.
made out of I think ano yan, aluminum, not aluminum, tubo.
Okay.
The one on the right is sword, not a sword but a knife. Na ganun din, na minout nila sa tube, tinatago nila sa tube.
Okay. So people normally kasi you're right, that people have this perception of how gangs are usually are on a daily basis. But so are you saying that they don't have the same conflicts, or they don't get into the same scale and type of manner of street fights as people perceive, how it is in the Western perception?
Actually, yun, someone asked me nga about that recently, who was doing research for a fiction, um, I think, book that
Mm.
he was writing.
Oh,
I
it's
said,
interesting.
Filipino gangs or groups in the Philippines are mainly influenced by number one, geography, and
Okay.
also number two, economics. Geography, when I say that, is that a lot of them were migrants, or a lot of them immigrated to, say, Manila, hoping to find a, quote unquote, better way of life,
Hmm.
and they end up getting trapped into that cycle, and then some of them, end up in jail or in Muntinlupa. So the first notion that you will do, maghahanap ka ng kapareho mo. Galing ka ng Ilocano ka,
Okay.
Caviteño, Batangueño. So same. Um, with these groups outside, itong sinundan ko sila CMC, sila naman, they're more of, how would I say, for lack of a better term, at the bottom of that chain. They do petty crime, they
Right.
peddle, they used to peddle small time drugs, shabu, marijuana,
Right.
but they hardly do anything na, kunwari, as far as I know, na, kunwari, hold up or something like that. But they do have rival gangs.
Right.
Inside Baseco kasi, territorial pa rin. So when I say geography, they carry that from history or from culture, na
Okay.
territorial din. So parang tribal pa rin yung style.
Okay, okay. I see. Now, in terms of your process, VJ, when you cover something that's sensitive as this one, were there instances na like they would say, please do not cover this, or I don't want to show the faces, or is that something that you have to contend with with this kind of topic?
Madami. Madaming, kumbaga, yun naman rules, no? But then it's something well, it boils down, I think, to integrity. What do you really want to show? Do you want to sensationalize something
Right.
that you don't really need to show, or faces? But also there are ethics that's involved in documentary photography. Mahabang usapan, but then at the same time, for me, I depends kasi gusto mo yung relationship alagaan. You want to build a relationship with your subjects,
Right.
and the only way to do this is to gain their trust, na napakahirap din gawin,
Mhm.
especially back then. So yun, like for example, for this photograph, I wanted to highlight yung conflict and what do they do or what they use during in times of, say, a gang war. So yeah, I showed it the detailed shot of their weapons. There's another shot that I did not include in this selection for this presentation, where it took me about several months to show one part of their lives, which is when they are still using drugs.
Okay.
Because yun, ganun din ang nangyari. Like, that was already evening. And I
Mhm.
was like, maybe I should go. And they're like, huwag ka muna umalis. We're going to use later. I'm like,
Okay.
oh, okay. So yun.
All right. Okay. And then okay, and then I think that is the end of it. But the photos that you were showing or that you chose for this is not just the gangs. It's more of like the daily life of everyone here. And do you think it was your job to really humanize these gangs because of that stigma that you were talking about earlier?
Well, that's number one. Yung goal ko talaga was to show how life is, especially for young adults inside Baseco, which is very, how do I say, it's like a mirror of how Philippine society is.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, in documentary photography, from what I know, you really cover different facets, not
Yeah.
only one person. Well, most of the time it's about one subject or one story, right? But
Right.
then you want to take your viewers or your audience to different facets of the story, or then you want to show environment, you want to show details. Kumbaga, it's like watching a film or a
Yeah.
series. Yeah.
Okay, okay. We have some comments here, VJ, from Matet Norbe. She's watching from Iligan City, Mindanao. She said she was excited to listen to VJ, who I have worked with in Marawi Narratives, Stories from the Rubble. I learned so much from him during our field work. And then JL Yanderal Photography. And then she said, hello Matet, watching from Iligan City. And Luis Liwanag is watching as well. Hello. Cheers,
O
Noel and
yan, si
VJ.
Luis ang isa
Hey
sa mga
guys.
influences in street and documentary photography that I hope you can guest. You'd be a guest soon. You can be a guest here on
Sure,
the show.
sure. I'll get in touch with Luis
Ang
after this.
haba ng kwento niya ni Luis, and he was one of the Filipino photographers that influenced us next generation.
Okay, that's great. I'll get in touch with him after. VJ, we have student photographers who are also here and students of photography, and I'm sure they want me to ask what type of gear do you use, and how do you prepare yourself when you're going into assignments like this one?
Actually, baka hindi ako yung tamang tanongin about gears, because I wasn't really a gearhead. I'm not really that technical. But then
No,
when I
that's
was
good.
doing
That's good. Yeah, yeah. That's good to know because some people, some photographers now, the younger ones, are more focused on the gear. So it's great that you said that.
oh
Like me.
well kaya nandyan, kaya kailangan yung show mo talaga.
Okay, yeah, but yeah, it's interesting because I saw one of your profile photos earlier today. I won't mention the one that I like the most, but you had a photo where it was a very casual, candid one. I think you were in Tacloban, and you just had one, like seemed like a rangefinder camera or a compact camera.
Yeah. Well, basically, my dad kasi trained me to use a single focal length approach, or single focal length, meaning 35 millimeter ka lang and then use that.
Very, yeah.
Basic ano naman yan eh. Basic kumbaga training or method
Okay.
in trying to visualize a story.
Yeah.
If you go back to the history of documentary photography, marami rin yung ganyan na medyo nasa purist sort of approach. So 35 mil, 28 mil, 24. Anyway, so yun, I was trained with that. So most of the time, yun din sana yung ginagamit ko. But then, hindi rin naman ganun kakompleto yung gear ko when I was starting as well. So I tried to stick basically to a normal focal length, which is
Okay.
basically 35 to a
35.
50.
Okay.
Ngayon, yung if unahan ko na, bago magtanong yung mga nanonood, the choice of black and white, for me before was it's purely aesthetic.
Okay.
Pero hindi rin ako ganun ka-traditional kasi I was sort of part of that generation that transitioned from film to digital. When I was covering a lot of the hard news for Philippines Graphic Magazine, that's
Mhm.
where I started. Film kami noon. Oo.
Okay.
So I shot color, mostly color actually. Then I would go back to Manila or you know throw the film to a lab and then wait for the prints. Small, we printed it in like 5-hour prints, and
Mhm.
then I had to submit that to the the art director or the editor pala, the editor back then.
Okay.
Oh, yun yung process before. But then yun, nung nag-digital, tinulungan ako ng mga kaibigan to purchase a digital camera. Yun. I tried to stick with almost the same focal length.
Okay. Before we move on, this has been probably one of the most interactive that we've had in terms of questions, VJ. So thank you for your patience in advance. Well, from Paco Guerrero, great stuff, guys. And yes, it would be great to hear from Luis down the line. Drew Galano is asking, maybe this would be the last question before we move on to the next set of photos. How about mentally preparing yourself for an assignment?
Yan. That's a very good question that also merits for another episode. But then, when I was younger, siguro ako, I would say honestly, it was more parang of an adventure. Each day or each moment that, you sort of survive a session or
Mhm.
an assignment or yun nga, a moment with for example, the gang members, okay, saya. But then, but then, hindi na pag-uusapan before yung trauma that certain things cause. I know a lot of photographers here and abroad, and hindi masyado na pag-uusapan yung PTSD when it comes to
Yes.
especially
Yes.
documentary photography kasi wala, parang usually magkikita-kita, yung in a bar, kantsawan, but then later on nagmamanifest. And if you go back to either history of documentary photography or photojournalism, marami yan. Maraming recorded moments yan. For me, um, how do I hindi ko alam kung paano ako
It's
nag-prepare. Ang sa akin lang, number one, safety. So yung logistics, very important yan. People who know me, my friends, I'm very particular about like logistics and safety
yeah.
when going into a situation. Sometimes a little bit over the top na hindi ko na hindi na ako nakakapag-shoot ng maayos. But then yeah, number one is logistics and safety. Number two is yung respect sa subject.
Yeah.
Pinayagan ka ba?
Yeah.
Or kailangan ba na mag-breach ka ng sort of ethical guidelines para makuha mo yung
Right.
either yung story or yung information, your photograph. Yan.
Okay.
Yan.
Okay, if you guys, Drew, if you would permit me to add to what VJ said, one of the difficult things that I've also encountered on my end, since I do wildlife and conservation, was trying to see what happens in terms of poaching for the species of sharks and turtles that very charismatic that I've already invested myself in emotionally. And one of the things I tried to do before was try to be detached from the onset, and I have to say that it's very very difficult as well. And I just kept on telling myself, even it was at the most heartbreaking situations, and is that you really can't save everyone. But even if I kept on repeating that to myself, it just didn't work. So I was as curious as you were for VJ's answer, actually. Okay, so VJ, we have we'll move on to our next set of photos, and these are, I believe, these are excerpts from Signos. So I will let you set them up again.
Mm. So, yun, Signos, or it had a different title before, Displaced Earth. In 2009, when Typhoon Ondoy happened, as a news photographer, I was working with a wire agency, Get Images. I responded to what was happening. So I covered the aftermath. I covered different facets: evacuation, relief operations, emergencies, and so on. And then that year, 2009, 2010, may back-to-back typhoons, Undoy and Pepeng, which hit the northern provinces, mostly Bulacan, Pangasinan, paakyat ng Baguio, Benguet, that area. So after those two assignments, actually, I must mention that a good friend, Pia Artadi, commissioned me to shoot for World Food Program. Then they took me to the north, Zambales, and then up to the north. And after that trip, dun nabuo yung idea na parang, and also after talking to some colleagues in the UN and also reading reports, I think the issue of the adverse effects of climate change was starting to pile up. The recorded, parang the most recorded rainfall was the Typhoon Undoy. Then Typhoon Pepeng was hitting the food producers up north. So I said, I think this is something that hasn't been discussed that much. As news photographers, marami yan. If you would look at the archives of either Getty Images or other news wire agencies, madami yan. But for me, I said, parang there are also different facets of displacement that I think needs to be. Fast forward to, so yun na, tuloy-tuloy yun, 2009, 2010, hanggang 2013, nagsushoot pa rin ako. But then, before 2013 actually, early 2013, I said, I think I have to put this project to complete. Sabi ko, parang kailangan ng may matapos. So, another good friend, and then later on, collaborator and publisher, si RJ Fernandez of Mapa Books, mentioned that she wanted na, parang she's sort of interested in collaborating with me to produce a book. Sabi ko, sige, let's see what happens. But then 2013, Typhoon Yolanda happened. And that was sort of like a game, not really a game changer. And I said like, kailangan maging part yung effects ng Typhoon Yolanda to this project. So I did shoot for about maybe 2013, 14, 15. 2015, RJ said, Veejay, we have to publish this now or else sayang yung message na pwede niyang itawid.
Okay. All right. Okay. So let us start with this, and I will just rewind it to the very first photo here. There you go.
Yan. Actually, yung photo na yan was in collaboration with the World Food Program together with Pia Tadi. Sa Zambales yan, in Botolan. We entered the town. I think we're coming from the north. Galing na kami ng north. Pabalik na kami ng Manila. We passed by Botolan. And then the whole town was basically blanketed in parang, basta haze. Sabi ko, ano to? Haze ba to? Pollution? Apparently, according to the locals, it's pyroclastic, yung lahar na hinahangin.
Okay.
Because during that time, I think this was in January, kailan nangyari yung Pepeng? I think December. This was shot in early January. So yung hangin was carrying the lahar and blanketed the whole town in lahar. Wow. So parang may fog. So pagdating namin dyan sa area na yan, this is by the Botolan River na nasira yung anong tawag ito, yung embankment niya, yung dike. Ginagawa nila yung dike. Actually, that guy in the middle is a construction worker. And the white thing that you can see, that's the pyroclastic.
Okay. Okay. Was it hard to breathe? Was it something that posed a medical issue? That lahar again?
Hindi ko rin iniisip yun ng time na yun. Actually, very careless.
Shoot lang.
Wala kaming bag out bag. Well, meron, sorry. Okay. Baka magalit sa akin yung mga kaibigan sa UN. Meron emergency kits na.
Yeah, I know they have a protocol, diba? Before
protocol yan. Bawal ka rin bumaba. Maraming protocol actually. Pero ako, personally, wala akong like N95 na wala eh. Panyo, pag medyo it gets a little bit hazy. Yan.
Na may pabango. Okay, so actually, if Veejay will let me interrupt him. That's actually one of the reasons. That's how we met before. I was I was being asked to photograph for, was it UNHCR?
UNHCR, yeah.
And then I couldn't do it. I had more important plans, which was to get married. So I looked for someone who was willing to do it, and JC Valencia recommended you to me, and that's how we met. I remember we were corresponding about it, and that was early morning. I was jogging, and for some reason you were up. Anyway, sorry, I digress. Right.
Sabihin na natin, ayaw ko payagan ni Pam.
Pam, if you're watching,
Laglagan na.
yun na yun, ha? Sige, I'll show your profile photo. Okay, anyway. Yeah, so Vijay and I are very good friends, so this is why this is probably the most playful episode, which is actually a stark contrast to the subject matter at hand. So, yeah, anyway, go ahead. Balances it out. Okay, so Vijay, this text photo.
So yun, after that series, Ondoy and then Pepeng, Aftermath, I continue documenting. Actually, this next photo was also from an assignment with a World Food Program.
Okay.
Marami akong assignments with World Food Program that was almost directly connected to climate because they are they work in emergencies, and usually almost always they're the first to respond because they are logistics team as well. Is galing, sobrang galing. Even in Typhoon Yolanda, my first trip to the damaged areas was with WFP. And
Wow,
I must say,
okay.
so ito, yung photo niyan is in Taguig.
Okay.
So that part of Taguig was still in floodwaters, submerged floodwaters for about several months, I think, after Pepeng. And they were distributing relief packs
Okay.
to the houses.
Okay, so it's interesting that you also mentioned that you were doing this for World Food Program. So let's get to the bit into the photography business of it. You have it in your book Signos, but it was a commissioned work. How did you fix the copyright and the license to the photos and put them in your book?
Very tricky. A lot of my collaborations, especially with non-profits, when they say non-profits, NGOs and international NGOs that works usually in emergencies or in different issues. I almost always mention that I can use the photographs for personal use, not for commercial. So when you say commercial, for example, kunwari yung ginagawa ng mga kaibigan natin sa Shelter Fund ngayon. Hi, Shelter Fund, Jason Gavila.
Hi, guys.
Nagbebenta ng prints. Hindi mo pwede gawin yun in a commercial sense or pagkakitaan yung photograph. But you can use it for personal use, meaning like for exhibitions or for like this for a book. But then I had to, yun nga, I've always been in close contact naman with the comms team of WFP, especially when Tia was still in town.
Okay.
So yun, a good set of yung first edit ng Signos, actually it was displaced earth pa back then. A lot of those was taken from my 2009 to 2010, 11 coverage.
Okay. So you didn't have to give them royalties for some, let's say, sales from the book.
Huwag mo na sabihin.
I'm sure a lot of
sold out na yung Signos, so sorry.
Okay, so it's too late. Yeah. Anyway. Okay.
Okay. Wait, just to clear that. Basically, when you're gonna ask permission, or you have to include that in your counter contract if you are. I mean, for photographers out there, especially if you're working with NGOs, quickly lang, Noel, hindi lahat tumatanggap ng counter contract. Most often, and I would say this bluntly, most often the big agencies, kinukuha nila yung copyright. Copyright is transferred to the commissioning agency, which is kind of sad.
Right.
Malaking issue yan, especially with Filipino photographers. But then at the same time, just for sake of conversation, case-to-case basis, ano ba yung kino-cover mo? Especially if you're responding to something like this, or responding to, say, a big story, baka pwedeng maihagil kasi may urgency. Meaning, ikaw yung may capacity to cover, say, a scenario, or ikaw lang yung may kaya, hindi naman ikaw lang yung may kaya, but lang ikaw yung nandun, then baka pwedeng ma-embargo.
Okay. because usually the best that we can hope for is it's a shared license or shared copyright, like they can't sell it, but rarely does it happen that it's just all yours. So
Mm.
I know who you're thinking of, and I'm thinking of that person too, and I hope that person is watching. So
Sabihin ka na.
no, no, no,
No.
don't say it. Don't say it. Okay, anyway, I might get struck down. Okay, anyway, so this photo is actually, if you say Veejay Villafranca, I actually remember this photo. Granted, I met you quite late in the game, but when they say VJ and I say this or I see this photo, I know it's you. So where did you take this photo?
This one naman was when I was with the Save the Children team in Laguna.
Okay.
I think this was taken in 2012. They were responding to uh, they were going to a community that was displaced by monsoon
Okay.
for several months already. So this community was from a certain barangay in Santa Rosa, Laguna. Sorry, I forget. Basta
Okay.
Laguna. Oh, and I remember that day because we were we took the boat, I think small boats around that area, and then we went around. And I was looking for a representative sort of image for that assignment to submit. But then nung nakuha ko na, usually yung anong tawag nito, yung response nila, yung main response nila or over the messaging of the comms team, nakita ko tong area na to and
Mm-hmm.
sabi ko parang wow, this is so surreal because this used to be a cola factory. I think Pepsi used to
Wow.
own this. So sobrang surreal kasi may mga tents and I think I remember yung mga tents na yan was from Canada or shelter in a box yata or something like that. And sabi ko parang bihira mo nakikita yon in displacement response.
Mm-hmm.
Dati talagang tent lang or yung trap, alam mo na, yung Pinoy
Yeah, yeah,
style
yeah.
na trapal, right? But
If
then now
any.
you see this, sabi ko, if any. Sabi ko, wow, ang ganda. And then, cliche man o sabihin, things just sort of happened in front of me.
Right.
Itong frame na to is a series of about 20 frames na nauna yung kunyari nakikita mo yung may umbrella na babae on the left.
Mm-hmm.
Nandito pa yan sa harap. Nagsimula yan dyan.
Okay.
So sinundan ko lang, I just stood in one position and then it was one of those parang instances na wala, I just stood in one position and I just kept taking photographs and hanggang lumabas yung babae na naka-veil.
Yeah.
Actually malong, sorry. Naka-malong. So dahan-dahan yan lumabas. Maybe one day I'll show the series of photographs it was taken in color, by the way. It was a digital photo that I converted to black and white
Okay.
to fit to that series.
Yeah, I was gonna say that she reminded me of that Afghan girl pose when she turned. Yeah. So, for this one, VJ, you were using your Fuji then, or was it a different camera yet at that time?
Okay, ayoko mag-plug pero matagal na akong Fuji
Just do
user.
it. Just do it. Just do it, man.
Matagal na ako yung magtatanong what cameras do I use. I started, when I was using film, I was using an F90X, Nikon F90X, and an FE, if I remember correctly. FM10. And then when I moved on to digital, a commercial photographer was selling his Fuji FinePix S2.
Okay.
So I moved to that. Through the help of a friend, I purchased that, and then I kept using that. And then my dad bought the S5, which is their top of the line at back then, SLR.
Okay.
In between, I was using D300S. I think for this photo, it was a Nikon yan, D300 if I'm not mistaken.
I'm racking your brain, man.
Oh.
That's funny. No, but I met you. No, it's interesting you're saying that. I always say that it's interesting because I've known you for quite a while, and if only people knew the backstories of these conversations and inside jokes. But I met you. You were still using a Nikon.
And then sabay.
Yeah.
When we did that shoot, I was using a D600S. D600. But then I had my Fuji as well, my X Pro 2.
Okay. Okay. All right. Interesting.
Yun yung
Okay.
transition ko before I went mirrorless with the Fuji camera.
There you go. I was waiting for that. Okay. There you go. Okay, and then and then you have this photo.
Oh, so okay.
Wow.
For Signos, I used several, especially the later part, no? After siguro 2012, 13, 14, I started using film again. Well, not film again, but then I've always, through the pressure of older photographer friends, they said that I should use film, go back to using film
Okay.
because, well, as a purist sort of advice maybe. Anyway, so I started using 35 mil rangefinder. This was shot with Contax G1.
Wow, nice. Okay.
So for Signos, for covering the aftermath of Typhoon Yolanda, I used a lot of film using
Nice.
the G1 with meron pang Fuji Neopan 400. A good part of that was shot on a Neopan 400 with a G1 and then with my panoramic toy camera.
Nice. Okay.
If you go to the next frame, I think, nandyan na. Sorry, mamaya na lang, okay.
Okay, sige. Sorry, I'll go back one frame and Jonathan Hodder saying amazing pictures. VJ will be looking forward to collecting a copy after the ECQ, but you said it's sold out.
Sold out
Yeah.
already.
Well, I could sell mine. It is signed sweet by VJ. Okay, and then Jilson Chu, our guest for Wednesday, one of my favorite photos of from VJ, amazing blocking, and from my niece Bea, amazing photo, perfect blocking and perfect lighting. Perfect photographer. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and then yeah, this one I really really like this photo, VJ. So
Yan.
yeah, when this
Yan
happened.
yung first, that was my first, ano ba sabi? Arrival. When I arrived in Giwan, with the help of WFP helicopter.
Okay.
So we flew from Cebu to Giwan, covering, I think there was a VIP coming in that time. And then I saw this C1 military C1 Japanese C130 that was nagbaba sila ng supplies o ng relief supplies. And then they were taking in passengers. Kasi yun yung nangyari nun dahil sobrang devastated ng buong region na yun. Luckily, Giwan had a big airport.
Okay.
Sobrang swerte. Otherwise, ang hirap maabot ng Giwan kasi nasa may dulo yan. South Eastern Samar ba? I think Eastern Samar. Tapos Tacloban Airport was devastated.
Right.
So they utilized Giwan for logistical purposes. So yan, nung nakita ko na, galing ako ng labas ng airport, and then nakita ko na that they were taking in passengers. I told the military personnel, sabi ko, pwede ba ako pumasok at mag-shoot? Hindi pa ba nag-aano yung... Sabi niya, pwede, go. So I was allowed in, and then yun, pumasok ako dyan sa C-130, and then I saw, yan nga, parang na-frame siya yung mga tao na papasok.
When you covered Haiyan, how soon were you able to embed yourself there, to go there? Was it day one?
Matagal. Kasi nasa abroad ako. I was attending a workshop in the Netherlands in 2013. Ironically, with the team of Hope. And then Typhoon Haiyan happened. And then, so nakapunta ako ng Visayas, mga third week na yata.
Third week, okay. And then the story was still fresh, considering.
Oo. Yun yung, well, iba yung storya ng mga kaibigan na, mga colleagues na nag-respond from day 1, day 2 to day 14. Iba din talaga. Grabe yung experience nila nun. And actually, I think they can correct me on this. I think some of them still have traumas from that experience. Kasi even first responders, actually, okay, good topic. Kasi doon natin pwede erase na after Typhoon Haiyan, doon na raise yung issue ng PTSD amongst first responders. Okay. Not only with humanitarian practitioners, but also with journalists.
Okay. And then this one,
Yan yun. So siguro this was part of my second trip. Yung first trip ko was about almost a week, parang 4 or 5 days. Yun nga, with WFP. And then I went back after siguro bago mag-Christmas yan. Pagbalik ko, yun, I carried my panoramic toy camera, yung Horizon Perfect. Was always loaded with film with a Neopan 400.
Okay.
And this was one of the shots. This was in Hindi ko na maalala. Eastern Samar yan after Baseco.
Okay.
It was one of the schools that was devastated. So I went down and then I explored the area and then I saw yun na. Yung, parang yung geometry. Later on ko na nakita yan. Hindi, nung finrame ko yan actually, piniframe ko lang yung babae dun sa poste. Then later on, dun sa contact sheets, when I saw this, I was like, parang naging geometric
Wow.
patterns yung
Happy surprises. Okay.
yeah.
Wasn't this in Shelter Fund?
Yes.
Okay.
It's in Shelter Fund. But also, if I can mention, this one naman was taken during an assignment for Greenpeace Philippines International.
Okay. So, okay.
They were producing parang a photo, reacting to my climate refugee project. Pinitch ko sa Greenpeace yun. And then they reacted saying that, sige, can you, wag lang, kasi yung thrust nung first edit nung Displaced Earth was medyo, parang medyo negative yung dating. Walang solution-based. Walang showing solutions.
Okay.
So ang reaction ni Greenpeace was, how about we continue documenting areas or communities that sort of has parang solutions to adverse effects of climate change.
Clean energy.
Yeah. Okay. So yan. Saan yan? Sa windmills in Ilocos.
Okay.
Yan din. Doon din yan. Ay, teka lang. Visayas yata yan. But it was the same assignment.
Okay. All right. We have a question here, VJ. I was gonna save this for after the last photo, but I think it's good to have this here. I wanted to be a documentary photographer, but I don't know how. I mean, do I need to be a graduate of journalism to be a docu-photographer? I used to be a freelance local music photographer po.
So basically, when you want to pursue documentary photography, depende kung ano yung inspiration or the push for pursuing this career. Usually, galing ng journalism yan. Because you want documentary photography takes its, how do I say, parang takes its form from an investigation or, it's an investigative approach to storytelling. That you want to divulge certain aspects of a story or an issue or an advocacy. So dun manggagaling yun. So it's a fusion of photography or news photography as well, and also journalism. There are local sources wherein you can learn. Actually, for example, in the school where I teach and where I also graduated from, sa Diploma in Visual Journalism sa Konrad Adenauer Foundation, Ateneo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying that you have to have formal training for this? Is that what you're saying, Vijay? Before you can actually start taking on these issues?
Not necessarily. Well, okay, to be technical about it, siyempre speaking as an instructor also, yeah, you need formal training for journalism. Formal training, I mean, either you study it or you practice it and you undergo sort of number of hours worth inside the newsroom under the guidance of an editor.
Okay.
Yun. Because dun nasusubukan yung skill of producing visual reports or at least reports, the basic of reporting.
Okay.
So
you're looking for the fundamentals, this is something that you have to learn through training, the fundamentals, the theories and the concepts, less of the technical.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right. Okay. Luis Liwanag is saying, Haiyan shocked me because it was like a post-nuclear apocalypse sans the radiation, and that was the time I think I got PTSD and the horror still haunt me until now.
There you go.
Okay. All right. So we're going to have Luis on the show as well. All right. For you guys who are joining us right now, for you guys who are here, this is Behind the Shot. This is where top visual storytellers like Vijay share their top 3 shots or photos or video and that have amazing stories behind them. So we are sponsored by Deity microphones who have been kind enough to support my little show. If you guys are more curious about Vijay's work, if you want to see more of his work, visit his Instagram, Veejay Villafranca, and you can also check out mine while you're at it, Noel Guevara Photo. For some context, we actually had like we ran parallel in the sense that VJ had talked about climate change, and that was one of the topics that I also covered during a certain point of my career. So that was something that was relatable for both of us. Okay, now this is before we move on to the third photo. Let me show that first. Okay. Okay, this is the third photo. Before you start, VJ, I just want to tell everyone that I will be cutting the Facebook live feed. So I'd like to invite everyone to transfer to YouTube. The link is there in the description of the watch party or of the video. And we can continue the discussion here in YouTube uninterrupted. Okay. All right, VJ. So please set us up this last set of photos for us.
So yung last set, this project entitled Barrio Sagrado, I started also when I moved on to documentary photography sometime in 2005 or 6. So religious practices, Catholic religiosity is part and parcel of Filipino life. We are the biggest Catholic congregation outside of the Vatican, I think. As a news photographer, it's almost mandatory that we cover these things, discover these events, because it's part of the news calendar that happens. So you start with the Black Nazarene procession in January, then you move on to Semana Santa or Holy Week, and then you move on to fiestas. So when I was doing this, one thing that I thought was, it is also representative of how Filipinos live. Not only because they're religious or anything, but it's also a way of life. So from then on, it was parang a conscious effort na to find different religious practices.
Okay.
Again, these projects that I started before didn't make sense until much later. So noong 2013, almost 12, nung nagkasakit yung dad ko with cancer, doon parang nag-fuse together yung project na to. Kasi ideally, as a personal experience, nung nagkasakit, syempre, some part, my mom was also religious, using religious practices, but also at the same time, you're trying to find alternative ways of trying to alleviate the personal experience of pain.
Mm-hmm.
So yun yung naging thrust nung project na to. It's basically when you're the question of in that point of your life where you are left with nothing, but when you're left with nothing and you're trying to survive, what do you do? What do you cling on to? So yun yung series of photos that I will show you.
Okay.
Parang yung selection from Barrio Sagrado.
And then I noticed that the next set of photos are usually two panels right beside each other.
Yeah. Oh, diptychs. Kasi I'm showing this now because this is part of an ongoing exhibition. Sayang naka-lockdown, but then it's still in the Ateneo Art Gallery in Arete. And it was also shown, it's part of the collection of Luz Verminda photography archive by Katia Guerrero.
Okay.
So diptychs yan kasi when I showed this in public, I printed it in a 3D format. So parang magkapatong yung photos na yan. Tapos when you move it, it changes. So it's almost it was the inspiration for that was the small religious calendars that you see in the streets outside of the churches. Doon ko nakuha yung idea niya.
And even those yung nakahang sa neck, diba? You can meron siya.
Stampita.
Yeah.
It's called lenticular prints.
Lenticular prints, okay. Yeah. And then what is happening in this set?
This one, si Tatay Vic, he's a faith healer from Bulacan. Okay. So me and another friend, si Rico, documented him during the fiesta. Medyo weird kasi nung nakita namin yung scene, usually ang nangyayari sa kanya parang he gets possessed daw by the child Jesus. And then yung candies na nakasaboy na yan is right before he comes out of his room and rouses from person to another person. So sinasaboy sa kanya and then eventually ipapakalat niya yan dun sa mga namimiesta na taga-Barrio. I mean, taga doon sa area nila. Or yung devotees.
Okay. Okay. All right. And then this shot.
This was shot, this was also shot in Bulacan. This is during the Panata or Good Holy Thursday.
Mhm.
So yung mga namamanata or pepenitensya. The photo on the left is a bucket filled with coins.
Mhm.
It's a bucket where they dip their yung tawag nila.
Yung pinapanghampas nila.
Hindi pa laspas yun. Nakalimutan ko. Basta gawa sa yantok yun. What happens is the guy who owns this bucket is yun yung nagsusugat sa likod nila. Hinahampas yung likod nila and then it's may blade yung kabilang dulo and then pag namamagana, hinahampas hanggang magdugo. Tapos pag hinampas nila ng gano'n, may dugo na, maghuhulog sila ng barya dyan. Tapos doon nila huhugasan yung ano. Kaya nagiging red.
Okay. So when I saw this photo, actually, biglang pumasok sa akin what my mom would have asked. You know, so from an outsider's perspective, she would be asking, in terms of the ceremony or what's happening, hindi ba mas madumi pa yun na nilagyan mo ng coins?
Yeah.
Hindi ba ma-infect yung ano? So I'm sure if my mom saw that, she'll be ano. Okay, and then you have this.
So for this diptych, the one on the right, same. It's also in Bulacan, in that area. During Holy Thursday, Monday, Thursday. The one on the left is during All Saints Day in North Cemetery. So I just wanted to show the ironies. Being Filipinos, I think some of us knows how ironic or sometimes even funny the situation is on the ground, diba? I mean, you see anong tawag dyan, yung mga libingan, yung crypts, but then you see this guy doing barbecue. At the same time, on the right, you have this guy selling cotton candy, colorful, very colorful. And then you have that guy at the back who just finished a show of devotion.
Okay.
A lot of people has asked me, ano ba yung project na to? Tungkol ba to sa, is it a criticism of the Catholic Church or how they, pre-Hispanic sort of colonialism? I guess it's almost almost all of that. But then at the same time, I didn't want to dictate the viewer much on what I want to say, but then just let them sort of marvel into the images that I show in different platforms.
Okay. Okay. And then this was also in Bulacan?
The one on the right is in the same area, in Bulacan, during Monday, Thursday. The one on the left is very interesting because it's a psychic healing session in Baguio by one of the famed psychic healers, Jun Labo. So what he does is he takes in patients, sick patients mostly, and he heals them, does psychic healing on them, operates them using his hand. A lot of them rose to fame around in the 70s and 80s. And just a little side story, my late grandfather actually did an investigation on the psychic healers. Then siguro we can talk about that in another. But then that became part and parcel as well of Barrio Sagrado, how it became a project.
Okay, and it's interesting how he gave you access, no? Or was it anyone is free to watch or
No. Mahirap kasi very wary na siya of media people and journalists kasi ilang beses na siya na sensationalize whatever he's doing. I mean, I went in there with no judgment, but then I was expecting to see exactly that process because I've seen it in news reports, I've seen it in photographs from before from friends, and I was like, I want to see it for myself.
Right.
And luckily, during that session, nabigyan kami ng access.
Okay. And then, this one.
This is the one on the left is the same scene in North Cemetery during Undas or also
where the barbecue was happening.
And ibang area naman to. Pero it's weird because like you go inside the North Cemetery. Dati pa to siguro this was taken around in 2011 or 12. Palagay ko nagbago na. But then I remember there's still a lot of food stalls inside cemeteries during All Souls and All Souls Day. The one on the right is the chapel where Tatay Vic holds his healing sessions in Bulacan.
Okay. And then
So it's yeah,
what are they selling here on the left?
hindi ko alam, parang wig
Oh,
pare.
I'm trying to decipher it.
Wig yan, wig. I remember wig yan kasi it's so weird because puro food stall, and then may wig.
Right, right.
I think that's what got my attention.
Okay. So there was really there was absolutely no solemnity in the area because of all of these stalls and
Meron din eh. Kasi
certain parts.
parang
Okay.
nilalagay nila sa certain areas yung food. Tapos through the years, naging mas strict. Lalo na yung North Cemetery kasi ang dami rin gumawa ng documentaries dyan.
Okay.
Photo and video documentaries about how people live with the dead. Dami niyan. As in, way back, I think even in the 90s, from the 90s, foreign photographers and documentary photographers, almost lagi yan nasa bucket list. North Cemetery. Then they became strict na towards in the last couple of years. Kasi nga, they get, na ano sila, na criticize sila ng either ng tao or ng local government.
They're more worried na when it comes to this. Okay. Now, that was the last for the third set of photos. Now, VJ, again, there's I believe a question here from the same person who asked about wanting to be a documentary photographer. So with your docu coverage for religious practices, sir, is there any chance that specific tradition captured you and to the point you wanted to convert or practice it as well? That's an interesting perspective, actually, because the other one was about detachment. So was there anything that really, that sold you to it because of your experience?
Actually, well, it's a good question. Dahil yun nga, yung first two projects was more of like a detached, observed way of looking at stories, projects, and social issues as well. Si Barrio Sagrado, very close to me yan dahil not only because of practice, but also because of, yun nga, ginawa siya ng grandfather ko, yung yung investigative report. But then later on, it was a personal question of different things. With regards to converting, hindi naman. I was I'm always interested to see what they do, how they do it. Kahit alam kong minsan may mga hindi na magandang I mean, making money and, those sort of things. Nangyayari yan. But then at the same time, I'm there hopefully to just document what's happening in front of my eyes and then put it together as a series,
right,
as a report.
Okay, all right. The question is actually very similar. It reminded me of what I read before. Have you seen The Passion, the one by Mel Gibson? It was saying there that most of the people who worked on that material actually converted to Christianity or Catholicism. So that kind of exposure to the topic for an extended period of time had that effect. So I there is a basis also for what this guy is asking. No, it doesn't have a name. It just says RC Fotografia. So yeah, so that was an interesting question. Okay, VJ. We are almost at the end of our show, and is there, again, for students and for emerging photographers who want to take up the same career as you are, capture probably the same type of subjects that you have been covering, is there anything that you would want to share that could help them on their way?
First of all, it's not an easy career track, if you want to call it a career. It's not an easy track because number one, funding is very hard now, especially in the last couple of years. And now, during the pandemic, lalo na siguro, mas mahirap. What I would suggest is that if they are interested in stories or they have a project in mind, develop it, but at the same time, find a way, be responsible enough to find funding for it, or either find funding for it or have basta make sure you pay your bills.
Because becoming a photojournalist feels like it's such a glamorous position. I'm a photojournalist, but of course people don't see, of course, the challenges that you have to go through.
Nag-glamorize lang siya, pero yun nga kasi parang laging nakikita, especially at the onset of social media, photographers or photojournalists would post pictures either of themselves or of their coverages. Pero to be honest, mahirap siya, lalo na if you're doing it in a freelance manner.
Right.
You have to consistently be in touch with editors. You have to consistently show your work or your portfolio. On That's on top of being always on the go for breaking news.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing also that I think kaya hindi rin ako masyadong nag-pursue on news photography or being a staffer kasi hindi rin ako basta-basta makalabas for breaking news.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you, VJ. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Behind the Shot. That was uh that was a very very good, very very informative session. We've actually gone over time and felt like it was 5 minutes long, man. So, thank you for sharing all your work and your insight as well, because I know a lot of people are interested in pursuing that career path. And considering how 22 has been very interesting, there are a lot of stories that people want to tell as well. So they want to use their cameras and head out and try to be a VJ Villafranca in the future, right? So okay, so we are at the end of our show. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to see more of VJ's work, visit VJ Villafranca on Instagram. I will just close the show, VJ. So please stay in our conversation, and I will get back to you. So I will just close the show, so you can say goodbye to the people who are watching right now on YouTube.
Again, thanks Noel for doing this show. Actually, it's very important because as I said, photography has grown into a big industry, but then at the same time, it's important that we always have context with what we do, no matter what kind of photography you pursue. So for people who want to pursue documentary photography, it's utmost the most important aspect of it would be ethics and integrity. Always respect your subjects. Always respect the response, the the access that's given to you. There's always a responsibility to the public to inform them of what is happening on the ground.
Okay.
Yun.
Thank you for that, VJ. VJ, I will see you in a bit. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
All right, thanks guys. Thanks for joining me for the seventh episode of Behind the Shot. We have still have a few comments here. VJ is still listening in my other session, so he can hear this. So thank you, Sir Noel and Sir VJ. This talk is very informative, mostly to people like me who loves photography. So we'll surely watch the other two episodes. Matet says thanks VJ, and Jalen Dar photography. Thanks VJ for the share. Kita kits in the new normal. So Behind the Shot is sponsored by Deity microphones, and if I may just share, up next on Wednesday is Jilson Chu. He's a photojournalist and he focuses mainly on street photography. And I met him on the Greenpeace ship, I think last year, right? So please tune in for that. That's gonna be a great episode as well. Okay, right. Again, this is Noel Guevara, conservation and wildlife photographer and the host of Behind the Shot. And if you want to see more of my work, check out Noel Guevara Photo. So thank you guys. I will see you again on Wednesday for Jilson Chu. And then on Friday, we also have Gab Mejia, who is a member of the WWF Youth Council. He is also a National Geographic explorer, and he's going to tell us the story of his 6-week travel across Patagonia alone. And this guy is just 22 or 23 years old. So watch out for that as well. Cheers, guys. I'll see you in the next episode.